This fourth generation C-Class really does democratise Mercedes luxury for a wider audience. Lighter, cleverer, nicer to ride in, and beautifully finished. True, pricing still reflects its premium positioning, but in this guise more than ever, this more efficient, more desirable design now has a look and feel worth every penny. A cut above its BMW 3 Series and Audi A4 rivals? Many will think so. How can it be that the car Mercedes calls its best-selling model has for so long felt a bit of an underachiever? The C-Class has traditionally campaigned in offering all that its brand knows about luxury saloons distilled into smaller form, and in its first 2 decades of life, over 8.5 million global buyers happily bought into the concept. For all that though, this was in truth, for too many years, a car a little short on quality and a little long on price tag. It may have been good enough to account for 20% of total Mercedes sales, but that wasn't enough to prevent it still always lagging a distant third in the compact executive sector sales charts, behind its arch rivals BMW's 3 Series and Audi's A4. Here though is a very different C-Class. This fourth generation version designed to change the status quo in this segment and redefine what a car of this kind should be. That's a big ask, but you sense a greater level of focus with this 205 model Series C-Class than with any of its predecessors. These were often trying to be too many things to too many people. If you bought one, it was usually for a quality feel, rather than because it was the best contender in its segment to drive, the nicest to sit in, or the cheapest to run. Today though, it's no longer good enough for any car's strongest selling point to be its badge equity, and the first signs that the Stuttgart maker had recognised that came with the third generation 204 series version of 2007, a model which had matured into a very effective all-rounder by the end of its production run. Here at last was a small Mercedes for BMW and Audi to take seriously. Fast forward to the present day, and you could conceivably argue that the three-pointed star now fields 2 competitive cars in this segment. A year before the introduction of this Mark IV C-Class in the summer of 2014, the brand had introduced a 4-door A-Class based CLA class model that, for the same kind of money, offered a stylish, if slightly less practical take on compact executive motoring. It's to this C-Class, though, that aspiring middle management executives will turn first in their search for something different from, and possibly a bit nicer than, their usual 3 Series or Audi A4 choices. There's certainly more than enough reason for them to seriously consider this car. It's slightly bigger, a lot more advanced, and boasts what now universally seems to be acknowledged as the nicest cabin you can have in this kind of model. But more important than all of that is the way that an advanced hybrid aluminium structure has brought the significant weight savings, which have made possible the lowest running costs in the segment. This then is the C-Class that BMW and Audi always feared Mercedes would build. Let's put it to the test. There are all kinds of reasons why this car is a more involving thing to drive than its predecessor. First and foremost, it really ought to be sharper, thanks to the fact that its structure now contains 5 times more aluminium than before. That, after all, takes over 100 kilograms from this 4th generation model's total curb weight and gives it a lower centre of gravity. Secondly, as a driver, you've all the necessary tools to make the most of this newfound appetite for corners, thanks to freshly developed aluminium-fashioned rear-wheel drive architecture and Agility Select, Mercedes' version of the Drive Select and Drive Performance Control systems that you respectively find in rival Audis and BMWs. Here, as there, use of this system via this rocker switch by the infotainment controller enables you to tweak steering feel, throttle response and auto gear change timings through various stages. Comfort, or Eco if you're in a relaxed mood, Sport or Sport Plus if you're pushing on, and Individual if you want to set up the various system parameters yourself. As with rivals, you can use the same settings to adjust ride quality too, though the difference that this C-Class offers is that buyers won't have to pay extra for the suspension element. As a result, you'll always be able to set this car up to precisely suit the mood that you're in and the road that you're on. I'm guessing that for most owners, that mood most of the time will be a relaxed one, which makes it wholly appropriate that this is the first model in its class to be offered with the option of air suspension. If you're thinking of buying this Mercedes, then you really should be thinking of ticking the box for this Airmatic option and the magic carpet ride it delivers over most surfaces. After all, it's this, more than any other feature, that really will make your C feel like a shrunken S-Class limo. All of this, Mercedes hopes, will divert attention away from what hasn't changed much in this Mark IV model, primarily the mainstream four-cylinder engines and the transmission that drives them. So the 2.1-litre diesel that almost all buyers choose continues pretty much as before, though is now badged BlueTech rather than CDI, in recognition of minor tweaks made to promote efficiency. As with the Mark III model, the majority of customers will want the 170 brake horsepower version of this power plant, the C220 BlueTech model I'm driving here. Like the entry-level C-Class derivatives, the 114 brake horsepower 1.6-litre C200 diesel and the 184 brake horsepower 2-litre C200 petrol, it comes as standard with a 6-speed manual transmission, but offers the option most will take of the brand's familiar 7G-Tronic Plus 7-speed automatic gearbox with its steering wheel mounted paddle shifters. Another carryover from the previous generation car. I can see why this C220 BlueTech variant is so popular. There's 400 Newton meters of torque, so strong pulling power right down low in the rev range whenever you want it, and decent performance with the rest to 62 mile/hour sprint accomplished in 7.7 seconds on the way to 145 miles an hour. It's certainly worth the premium over the much feebler and smaller Renault-derived diesel in the entry-level C200 diesel C-Class. In fact, my only real issue with C220 BlueTech motoring is that the age of this car's engine tells when it comes to refinement. Direct rivals are quieter. In fact, you'll discover just how quiet this Mercedes can be if you take a drive in the impressively silent C200 petrol model, which is pretty much identically as quick as this C220 BlueTech and efficient enough to make clued-in customers think twice about diesel if their annual mileage isn't very great. If you'd like to stay with efficient four-cylinder C-Class motoring, but have it delivered with a touch more power, then a couple more auto-only derivatives with this model's 2.1-litre diesel engine beckon. The conventional choice is the C250 BlueTech variant, which has 204 brake horsepower at its disposal, so the 0 to 62 mile/hour sprint time is improved to 6.6 seconds, and the top speed rises to 153 miles an hour. The same stats, in fact, as are returned by the less conventional choice, the C300 BlueTech Hybrid, which uses the same diesel engine but mates it to a 27 brake horsepower electric motor, so that thankfully you hear a bit less of it. It's what Mercedes calls a mild hybrid, which means that its electric-only range capability is very restricted. If you want more of that, then you'll need to talk to your dealer about the plug-in hybrid model. Both diesel-electric variants are certainly very clever. You can pre-program their air conditioning systems from your smartphone to cool or warm the cabin before you get into the car. While on the move, the power unit can use sat-nav data to predict hills ahead and prepare the battery accordingly. And further up the range? Well, the engine choice is dominated by desirable turbocharged petrol power with Turbo 4, Twin Turbo V6 or Twin Turbo V8 engines.
It is, of course, a V8 that's fitted to the flagship C63 AMG model, a gloriously sonorous power plant the brand says can be tuned to produce well over 500 brake horsepower. That C-Class derivative shows just how much Mercedes has learnt in recent years about handling dynamics, as in fact to some extent does this one. What you learn after a spirited drive is that the direct steer electric power steering still needs a touch more feel, but that overall this car is certainly more agile through the turns than it used to be, and even more so if you've one of the more powerful variants fitted with 4MATIC four-wheel drive. It all means that the gap to the class-leading BMW 3 Series has been closed, if not completely overcome. Thanks for this is due both to the weight loss program and a Torque Vectoring rear brake system that seamlessly applies slight brake pressure to the outside rear wheel during tight cornering to help get the power down where it's needed through the bends. The exact level of handling sharpness you can have will inevitably be heavily influenced by whether you bothered to click into either the Sport or the Sport Plus modes on the Agility Select driving system, and more fundamentally by the suspension choice you make at point of purchase, an important thing to get right. I've already mentioned the preferable Airmatic air-sprung setup. If you can't stretch to that, then there are three options. Standard is a comfort suspension package, but you can get that set up lowered by 50mm on sport models and stiffened if you've chosen an AMG line trimmed variant like this one. In all three cases, there's a balance between feel and fluidity that I think sets a new benchmark in this segment. To be honest, even if there wasn't, it'd be hard not to be seduced by the technology here. For example, from SatNav data, this car knows when you're about to enter a tunnel and automatically closes its air recirculation flap to stop the cabin from getting filled with fumes. At night, if you've got the Adaptive High Beam Assist Plus package fitted, you'll never have to dip your full beam in the face of oncoming traffic, thanks to the clever way that the system masks out any other road users detected in the beam's cones of light. And of course, like most modern executive cars, this one can brake for you to avoid accidents at high or low speeds, and to some extent even steer and park itself. It's state of the art.
You don't really have to know very much about cars to know what this is. And if you know the Mercedes model range beyond this C-Class, it's probably fairly obvious where the inspiration for this fourth generation design came from. By and large, customers come to this car seeking a scaled down version of the brand's S-Class luxury limo. And here the long bonnet, the set-back passenger compartment and the short overhangs are just a few of the things delivering exactly that. The result might not please those who've just spent their lottery winnings on a top S-Class model, but buyers browsing in this car's less exalted market segment will surely see it as a very desirable looking thing indeed. Wander round the shapely silhouette and you quickly appreciate the painstaking attention to detail that's gone into things like the wafer-thin shut lines and the intricately formed jewel-like headlamps with their optional LED illumination. There's real classic elegance here too, centred in profile around this character line, what Mercedes rather awkwardly calls a dropping line, that descends discreetly from front to a rear section where this pronounced shoulder above the back wheel gives the rear end of the car a power-packed look that's emphasised by these softly sculptured LED rear tail lights. More important than all of this, though, is of course what sits beneath the shapely bodywork, specifically a structure with an aluminium content which has risen massively from 10% to nearly 50%, resulting in an overall weight saving of more than 100 kilograms. One of Mercedes' slogans for this car is that it sits one class higher. And that's true here, not only in terms of style, but arguably also in terms of size. Almost everything is, after all, a little larger than it was before. Partly that's because the brand's introduction of their only slightly smaller CLA class four-door coupe model has given this C license to grow a little within the bounds of what was possible before it intruded into executive-sized E-class territory, something the designers only just avoided. Even as it is, this car's extra 95mm of length and extra 40mm of width make it as spacious inside as an E-Class model from the late 90s. That's something most obvious from a seat in the rear. True, the sweeping roofline you duck around as you get in suggests that headroom will be at something of a premium for taller folk. And indeed it is once you get yourself inside. I'd hesitate to exacerbate the problem further by ordering this optional panoramic glass roof. Otherwise though, genuine improvements have been made in terms of rear seat spaciousness in comparison to the previous model, where before it wasn't really possible for one 6-footer to sit behind another in real comfort. The extra 80mm this fourth generation model boasts in its wheelbase length changes that. Nor will it be quite such a squash to take 3 folk on short trips should the need arise. But it's the upfront experience that really sets this 4th generation C-Class apart, not only from its predecessor but also from its immediate rivals. This, more than anything else, is the thing that will sell this car. Come to the wheel familiar with the old Mark III model, which had a functional cabin that was about as stylish as Angela Merkel, and you'll find this car radically different, with a broad, eye-catching centre console sweeping between the front seats. It's a one-piece design on automatic models like this one, but go for a rarer manual gearbox variant and you'll get the steeper dash with separate trim elements that's necessary for ergonomic operation of the shift lever. Either way, one thing's for certain, you'd have to spend an awful lot of money speccing up the cabin of a rival BMW 3 Series or Audi A4 for it to feel anything like as nice as this. There are none of the cheap plastics that on those cars you can find hidden in the lower reaches of the fascia if you look hard enough, and the quality touches, things like the high gloss black trim on the centre console and the Artico man-made leather on the instrument panel, deliver much of the feeling of class upgrade that the brochures promise. There's the option of beautifully veneered wood and even a lovely analogue clock if you want it. Proper luxury then, just distilled into a slightly more compact form. Not that the practicalities have been forgotten. There's much more room to stow stuff around the cabin, for example. Take these door bins, nearly 4 times larger than before. And with these sorts of cars, I rarely feel enough time has been spent on perfecting the seats, given the many hours owners will be stuck in them. This one, though, is promised to feel genuinely more comfortable than before, and is, with extra shoulder support and another 10mm of height adjustment. As you'd expect, it positions you beautifully in front of the leather-trimmed 3-spoke steering wheel with its 12 multifunction keys. Behind it, there's the brand's usual direct select gear change stalk for automatic models and a smartly efficient pair of tube design round dials separated by a 5.5-inch TFT colour display, the combination of which is a model of clarity. Not that you'll have to look at the dials much if you specify your car with the optional head-up display that projects key driving information onto the bottom of the windscreen. One other nice touch you might not notice, there are no stereo speakers in the bottom of the doors. Instead, using what Mercedes calls its front bass system, they're mounted in the footwells, installed in cavities that act as resonance chambers and give you clearer, crisper sound. Look around you and the 2 staples of current Mercedes cabin style are present and correct. There are 5 round SLS supercar style air vents with metallic cool touch finishing, and above the 3 in the centre sits a prominent iPad style infotainment screen, its freestanding positioning smacking either of afterthought or inspired design, depending on your point of view. It's 7 inches in size as standard and acts as the display for the rather old-fashioned graphics of the Garmin sat-nav system that most customers will specify.
If you've the money in your budget though, you'll want to opt for something a bit more sophisticated in the form of this Command Online package that gets you this much more sophisticated 3D presentation on this larger 8.4-inch screen. Either way, the functionality is controlled not only by this usual rotary controller that swivels, slides and pushes, but also by a touchpad that permits letters, numbers and special characters to be handwritten. Though in this right-hand drive model there's the awkwardness of having to do that with your left hand. C-Class regulars won't be expecting to find the handbrake here. In the old model that was replaced by an awkward floor-based foot brake that gave drivers of manual gearbox models a few headaches when starting off on steep slopes. With an increasing emphasis on manual transmission this time round, Mercedes needed to sort that and predictably has opted instead this time for the kind of electronic handbrake switch that all its competitors use. Another area where this C-Class has needed to play catch-up is in the area of telematics and infotainment. No longer. Even the base Audio 20 stereo setup allows internet access via your phone, while on the move, Mercedes apps like Weather, Google Local Search with Street View, and Panoramio, Destination Route Download, and Facebook can be used. The brand is also offering what it calls Mercedes Connect Me services that work via a special vehicle integrated SIM card. Now through this, owners can not only better manage things like accidents, maintenance and breakdowns, but also connect remotely into their vehicle at any time to, say, find out the current fuel level or operate the heating and ventilation. And out back, well, once you raise the boot lid, optionally possible by waving your foot beneath the bumper if you approach the car laden down with bags with the key in your pocket, you'll find that there's a marginal 5-litre increase in cargo capacity over the previous generation model. It's now 480 litres, about the same as is offered by obvious rivals. There's a small ridge near the bulkhead that can sometimes get in the way if you're trying to slide stuff right back and use the whole 1 metre length. But overall, I'd say that the space on offer here is a little more easily accessible than it is in a 3 Series or an Audi A4. Easily wide enough for a set of golf clubs. You also get a large cubbyhole underneath the boot floor, though personally I'd rather do without this and get a proper spare wheel rather than a can of foam and a compressor. Good luck with that the next time you're stranded on the side of the road on a rainy night. If you need more room and have a model with the split folding rear bench that Mercedes rather meanly deletes from the entry-level version, then you can use these levers and drop the 60/40 split rear seat back and accommodate longer items. Though if you are going to be carting such things about regularly, the estate version would of course be a better bet. The boot of the estate variant may not be much bigger than that of this saloon. It's an unremarkable 490 litres, but you can free up 1,510 litres when the 40-20-40 split folding rear bench is pushed forward, potentially at the push of a button. So, to the budget you'll need for this C-Class model. Mercedes has developed a wide range of different body style options based around this design, including a coupe and a cabriolet. But here we're going to concentrate on the saloon and estate variants most will be considering. Pricing for mainstream versions is concentrated in the £27,000 to £35,000 bracket, with a model-for-model premium of £1,200 for those wanting an estate rather than this smart saloon. Whatever body shape they decide upon, the majority of buyers will want to progress beyond the entry-level C200 petrol and diesel versions and get themselves into one of the 2.1 litre BlueTEC diesel models that account for the majority of sales. Probably the 170 brake horsepower C220 BlueTEC variant I'm trying here. Like its lesser stablemates, it comes as standard with a 6-speed manual gearbox, but offers the £1,500 option that most will take of 7G-tronic plus 7-speed automatic transmission. If you'd like a touch more power, there's an auto-only C250 BlueTEC model with an uprated 204 brake horsepower version of this same engine.
That same diesel power plant is paired with a 27 brake horsepower electric motor to create the very fast and very frugal C300 BlueTEC Hybrid. This car, along with an even pricier plug-in hybrid C-Class variant, will appeal to those who've grown a green conscience. Those who haven't will be more interested in pricier petrol models that use turbocharged 4, twin-turbo V6 or twin-turbo V8 engines. The brand says that the fastest V8 as fitted to the top C63 AMG can be tuned for well over 500 brake horsepower. You can even talk to your dealer about optional 4MATIC four-wheel drive in some of the more powerful models. That then is the C-Class lineup, but of course it faces tough opposition, primarily from two cars, BMW's 3 Series and Audi's A4. You might expect both to slightly undercut this car on price, but in fact, if you compare like with like in terms of engine and spec, you'll find that the required sums for ownership are pretty similar across the board. That fact alone, I think, will sway many in the direction of this car with its nicer cabin, high-tech features and impressive residuals. Are there other alternatives you could realistically consider? Well, not many. Mercedes itself offers one of them, its own CLA class compact four-door coupe. That car only really stacks up against this one as a C220 diesel variant that costs about the same as the equivalent C, but is more expensive to run and cramped in the back. As for other choices, well, on the subject of four-door coupes, I might be tempted by Volkswagen's stylish CC model, available for the same kind of money as is being asked here, but lacking the efficiency, the handling dynamics and the high-tech features of this Mercedes. Lexus's IS Saloon is a more up-to-date, directly comparable alternative, though you really have to have it in petrol-electric hybrid form, as the conventional petrol version's too thirsty and there's no diesel option. But does that hybrid offer enough reasons not to buy a C220 or C250 BlueTEC? I'm not sure it does. Beyond that, there aren't really many other directly equivalent options to this C-Class, unless you're prepared to look at products from some of the nicer but less exalted brands. Pitched against, say, this C220 BlueTEC, a comparable Volkswagen Passat 2-litre TDI 177 offers a £4,000 saving, while a comparable Volvo S60 D4 can be yours at a £6,000 saving. Neither car, though, has quite the appeal of this Mercedes. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a C-Class that you really want, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous Mercedes has been when it comes to standard equipment. And the answer, rather surprisingly, is that this is arguably the best kitted out car in its segment. I'd have expected to have to pay extra for the smart Artico leather trim, even if the hide is man-made. And rivals put things like a reverse parking camera, rain-sensing wipers, an audio system with internet access, electric front seat operation, touchpad access for the infotainment setup, and cruise control with a speed limiter on the options list too. It's all standard here. Nor do you have to pay more for the adaptive dampers that'll enable you to adjust the ride quality, or the Agility Select system through which they operate that also tweaks steering feel, throttle response and gear change times through 5 different modes. Commoner standard features include alloy wheels of at least 16 inches in size, LED daytime running lights, 2-zone climate control and a DAB digital radio tuner. Across the estate range, you also get a powered tailgate and roof rails as standard too. All of this is included at base SE level, and if I was buying this car, I'd be tempted to go for that and add the executive package that for an extra £1,000 gives you Garmin satellite navigation, heated seats and the split folding rear bench. Do you really need more than this in your C-Class? It depends who's paying, I suppose. If that's not you, then you'll probably want to know about the pricier Sport and AMG line trim levels that have the advantage of opening up more of the options catalogue if pushing the boat out a bit is possible within your budget. Let's start at Sport level, which will set you back around £2,000 over the cost of SE trim, and in addition to the executive pack elements I just mentioned, will give you larger 17-inch wheels, suspension lowered by 15mm, LED headlights, power folding mirrors, sports seats, an interior lighting package, and a Parktronic with active park assist system to steer you into tight spaces. Nice, but this particular C-Class is nicer. It has top AMG line trim, which adds a further £1,500 on top of the sport level price. This package includes 18-inch wheels, a body kit, a sports braking system, sports steering and sports suspension, a leather-stitched dashboard and AMG branding for the seats, pedals and steering wheel. Go for this C in sport or AMG line trim, and your dealer will also be keen to tell you about various premium packages that add niceties like ambient interior lighting, keyless go, seat memory, a panoramic glass roof, a glorious 13-speaker Burmester surround sound system and the Command Online setup. All are fitted to the car I have here. The Command system is especially well worth having. For a start, it gives you a larger 8.4-inch colour tablet screen from which to control via voice or button an HDD 3D sat-nav system and a 10GB music library. As part of the package, you get an animated compass, a live traffic information service to guide you around jams, and what the brand calls a drive show function, which displays information to passengers in a similar way to the on-screen presentations on board airliners. You also get in-car internet access to Mercedes-Benz online services, via which you can create in your car a WLAN, that's a wireless local area network, hotspot, and access Twitter, Facebook and internet radio. And you can download integrated Mercedes apps for things like weather, Google local search with Street View and Panoramio. There's also the option of downloading a route preset on a home computer through Google Maps. Plus, should you have an accident, the Command system will automatically call for help via your phone, sending the nearest call centre your exact GPS coordinates. And other options? Well, I might be able to do without the analogue clock and the hands-free boot access system that flips the lid up as you wave your foot beneath the bumper. I would, though, really want to have the Airmatic suspension with its magic carpet-style ride and more advanced variable damper control. I might also be tempted by the head-up display that projects key driving information onto the base of the windscreen so that you don't have to take your eyes off the road. And a 360-degree camera that uses 4 network cameras dotted around the car to provide a bird's-eye view of your surroundings. Then there's the Air Balance package that not only perfumes the interior from a flask in the glove compartment, there's a choice of 4 fragrances, but also ionises and purifies the cabin air. Lovely. On to safety, an area where this car aims to set new standards. Let's start with the expected features fitted across the range. These including twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus a driver's knee bag, as well as anti-whiplash head restraints, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a deformable steering column and tyre pressure monitoring. There's also a clever active bonnet that, in the nightmare scenario of you colliding with a pedestrian, will, in a fraction of a second, raise itself by 80mm, better protecting the unfortunate person's head and giving them a better chance of survival. Could be a lifesaver. More common inclusions run to the usual electronic assistance for traction and stability control. Plus ABS braking, of course, with brake assist for emergency stops that'll activate adaptive brake lights, able to automatically flash and instantly warn following motorists. But as you might expect in this day and age, this car goes a lot further than that. All variants get crosswind assist that helps stabilise the car in sudden side gusts of wind, and steer control steering assist that helps you keep the wheel straight at cruising speeds. Then there's attention assist, a clever feature that monitors your driving reactions. To detect drowsiness, it'll respond to by prompting you to stop for a restorative coffee. And all models get a torque vectoring brake system that seamlessly applies slight brake pressure to the outside rear wheel during tight cornering to help get the power down where it's needed through the bends. Talking of brakes, I should also mention the adaptive brake system, which has a hill hold function, will prime the brakes if you suddenly come off the throttle, and will wipe the discs in wet weather to keep them continually effective. Cleverest of all, though, is probably the collision prevention assist plus setup. Now, it's like having an extra pair of eyes that at urban speeds of up to 31 miles an hour constantly scans the road in front and behind you for potential collision hazards. If one is detected, it'll warn you and prime the brakes. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the car can brake itself to reduce the severity of any resulting accident. The system also protects against rear-end collisions at speeds of up to 25 miles an hour. In other words, it's very clever. Testing has indicated that this whole setup will eradicate 20% of nose-to-tail accidents and decrease their severity in a further 25% of cases. On to extra cost optional safety features. The key ones are grouped together into what Mercedes calls its driving assistance package, which is only available to Sport and AMG line models fitted with auto transmission. It includes the Distronic Plus system that can work at high speeds using this radar and automatic braking to keep you a safe distance in front of and behind other cars in highway traffic. There's also blind spot assist to stop you dangerously pulling out to overtake, and lane keeping assist to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And the clever pre-safe anticipatory system that senses an emergency situation early on before automatically pre-tensioning the seat belts, closing the windows and positioning the power sunroof and electric seats if they've been fitted to provide for optimum crash survival. Other optional safety stuff includes side bags for the outer rear seats and traffic sign assist, which uses a screen-mounted camera that pictures speed limit signs as you pass them and displays them on the dash. That same camera also operates an optional BAS Plus with cross-traffic assist system that can detect pedestrians you might be in danger of hitting and help you avoid collisions with crossing traffic at junctions. I mentioned earlier the LED intelligent headlamp system that can vary its beam pattern and lighting to suit the kind of road you're driving on. And I'd also want to look at the Adaptive High Beam Assist Plus setup that allows you to drive at night with your full beam permanently on, thanks to the clever way that it masks out any other road users detected in the beam's cones of light. Truly, this is safety for the 21st century. A decade ago, the kind of progress this fourth generation C-Class has made in terms of efficiency would have seemed impossible. Yet the reality is that fuel consumption and CO2 emissions have been virtually halved in that time. A class-leading drag coefficient of just 0.24 CD helps here. So does the 100 kilogram weight saving brought about by use of aluminium in nearly 50% of this vehicle's construction. And the greater efficiency of Euro 6 compatible engines that across the board are about 20% more economic than those in the previous generation lineup, provided you select the Eco mode in the Agility Select driving control system. This car's running cost figures are of course much aided by the usual package of efficiency measures, which here run to fuel saving electronic direct steering, low rolling resistance tyres, an efficient Eco transmission mode for the 7G-tronic Plus automatic gearbox, and, as you'd expect, an Eco start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. It's impressive that, as a result of all that, this C-Class can set a new segment running cost benchmark, even in a volume C220 BlueTech model that, under the bonnet, is virtually identical to its predecessor. In standard SE form, it returns a combined fuel economy figure of 70.6 miles to the gallon and emissions of just 103 grams per kilometre with 16-inch wheels, though those figures do inevitably fall a few percentage points if you opt for the larger 17 or 18-inch rims fitted to plusher variants. Even so, at launch,
This car held a fuel and CO2 running cost advantage of around 5% over its closest directly comparable rivals, Audi's A4 2-litre TDI Ultra and BMW's 320d efficient dynamics. Go for this car's same 2.1-litre diesel engine in the Pokia 204 brake horsepower auto-only C250 BlueTEC model and the running cost hit isn't too great. That variant managing 65.7 miles to the gallon and 109 grams per kilometre in standard form. Its same power plant is in fact used by the current efficiency poster child in the C-Class lineup, the C300 BlueTEC Hybrid. Here that diesel is mated to a 27 brake horsepower electric motor that makes quite a lot of difference, improving fuel consumption to 78.4 miles to the gallon and delivering 94 grams per kilometre of CO2. These figures are aided by clever technology, like the way that sat-nav data helps prepare the battery for ascending steep inclines, and a sailing function that turns off the engine when you're coasting on the highway or going down a hill. Mercedes has developed a plug-in hybrid variant too that does even better, but it'll be difficult for most to justify that car's lofty upfront asking price. Either way, as a hybrid owner, you'll escape the 3% tax surcharge that diesel drivers have to pay. Most C-Class buyers, though, will be looking at a more conventional variant. Maybe the entry-level 1.6-litre diesel C200, which can return 99 grams per kilometre of CO2. Or perhaps the petrol C200 model, which manages 53.3 miles to the gallon from its 2-litre engine on the combined cycle and 129 grams per kilometre of CO2. Returns that only a few years back wouldn't have disgraced a car fuelled from the black pump. Of course, you'll need much deeper pockets to run one of the Pokia petrol models that use turbocharged 4, twin-turbo V6 or twin-turbo V8 engines, but even these variants are a lot more efficient than they used to be. What else? Well, servicing costs can be kept in check by an Assist dashboard service indicator that monitors engine use and tells you exactly when maintenance is due. There's also a service care package that helps owners budget for routine maintenance, spreading the cost of regular servicing, guaranteeing the price of parts and labour for up to 4 services, and covering the cost of all recommended service items. I'm thinking of things like brake fluid, spark plugs, air filters, fuel filters and screen wash. And the comprehensive 3-year warranty is built upon by Mercedes' Mobilo scheme, which delivers breakdown cover for up to 30 years, as long as you continue to have your car serviced at a Mercedes main dealer. And residuals? Well, as ever, they look strong. Expect this car to marginally improve on its predecessor's class-leading showing after the usual 3-year ownership period. Finally, insurance groupings are reasonably affordable. To give you a feel for these, I'll tell you that a C200 petrol model and this C220 BlueTEC diesel fall into Group 29, while the C250 BlueTEC diesel is rated at Group 35.
It used to be quite easy to pigeonhole the 3 main premium contenders in the compact executive sector. The BMW 3 Series gave you a sporty drive, while an Audi A4 offered a nice cabin and a bit of high tech. If you went beyond these two and considered a Mercedes C-Class at all, you were probably a more mature buyer with priorities that didn't really fit into either category. It was a bit of a compromise badge equity choice, but it isn't any longer. Instead, what we have here is a car more than good enough to make significant inroads amongst customers who once would have thought little before signing again on the dotted line for yet another German C-Class arch-rival. Potential Audi customers will like the high technology, the intelligent headlamps, the class-leading safety kit and so on. Wavering BMW buyers may be tempted by the neat Agility Select performance driving system and the unique air suspension option. And both groups will appreciate the far-reaching running cost savings that in day-to-day terms have made ownership of the 3-pointed star in this sector more affordable than ever before. So affordable, in fact, that taking the high residuals into account, C-Class ownership over longer periods could now end up costing you less than something Mondeo-like and more mundane. Don't get me wrong, Mercedes still has work to do with this car, primarily in terms of diesel engine refinement. But on the evidence of this model, the signs are that its rivals are going to have to up their game.